Right, I know this video is pretty old, at least by internet standards. I think it was a month or two ago that it was widely circulated. Um, but it touched on a couple of things I thought were quite interesting. So I've decided to give it a bit of a watch, as to spread my thoughts a bit more about it. So without further ado, let's start with something here. I'll let it play and then, do the standard 2016, 15, 14 reaction video, why the fuck not?
Both versions of Justice League, both the Snyder Cut and the Whedon version, were not good movies, and they were never going to be good movies.
No, she's not wrong here. Absolutely not. They both have Zack Snyder's influence, which hasn't been really conducive to good movie going maybe good movie going experiences, but in terms of actual good filmmaking, nah. Nah, that man should never be allowed to write a fucking script in his life, I'll tell you that for free. Uh, but I know she's not entirely wrong there. They were never going to be good movies. One, the Justice League, the Whedon version, was just going to end up being a butchered mess of a film, because there's no way they're going to dedicate the amount of time needed to actually make a new version for him to actually properly make. It was going to be bugger straight from the start. However, it's later on in the video that I think we have some areas where she's technically right, but not for the reasons she thinks. So let's continue on and just take a look exactly what I mean by that, shall we?
Comics are, and have always been, very queer. They are stories written by outsiders for outsiders about outsiders.
Queer? I mean strange, aye. The classical meaning of the word queer, I would agree with you. For outsiders, by outsiders. I mean, by outsiders, definitely. For outsiders, I wouldn't really say that that's the case. Definitely for near enough everyone who'd want to pick up and read what is basically what you can interpret as modern day, what's it called? Myths and legends. It's I mean, it might be a bit complimenting now, especially with the fucking state of comic book industries. It's the hero's journey. It's the Gulliver's Travels, all of it, every single one. The Lord of the Rings almost. You could make it. You could make comparisons to. It's not exactly the same, and it's quite often not on the same level. But the feeling behind it's still the same in that regard. It's myths and legends and tales built to entertain or consider ideas. But she's not entirely wrong. But for outsiders by outsiders, I suppose you could say that that's correct. However, it's a bit later on still that I think we have our first real problem.
I first wrote about the commodification of nerd culture back in 2012, and how it seemed to me that these insiders moving into outsider spaces were going to be the death of it.
Not wrong! Again. However, it's the definition of outsiders moving into insider spaces which is a bit of a problem. And she only wrote about it in 2012. This has been going on for a lot longer than that. Far longer. In fact, it's only really in 2014 where the insiders moving into outsider spaces first received a bit of a pushback, and they never let that particular movement go. Now will they?
These insiders don't necessarily know how to tell outsider stories, and so everything they make is meant to appeal to white, straight, cis men. Moving into outsider spaces were going to be the death of it. These insiders don't necessarily know how to tell outsider stories, and so everything they make is meant to appeal to white, straight, cis.
I had to just quickly redo that one because I missed the exact point at which I want to pose it. They're meant to appeal to white straight cis men. Who the fuck do you think was writing half of these books that made the comic book industry what it was before your kind came in and fucked it, lass? Seriously. Seriously. Now, I'll be upfront about it. I've not been that massive a fan of comic books. I've read Sandman, I've read Old Man Logan, I've read a couple of others. And from recommendations, I've started to read a bit more, and they're actually not that bad, as long as you don't go too far into it at certain points. But this whole idea that white, straight, cis men somehow are insiders to God knows what, coming into outsider spaces. You've not been a nerd as long as someone like me has. I'll tell you that one for free. See, even when I was like, even as I was a ween, a kiddie, in primary school, I was mainly playing on PC, which was a hell of a time then, because it wasn't anywhere near as big as it is now. And the biggest problem is that it wasn't an Xbox or it wasn't a PlayStation. No, PC was where my main hunting ground was even then. And yeah, I was an outsider there. I like Star Trek, an outsider there. I'm a white, straight, cis, well, 80% straight. 80% straight. Well, that really depends whether or not you answer the trap question as to whether or not they're gay. Whichever one knows the correct answer is no, they're not. It looks like a woman, sounds like a woman, feels like a woman. Let's continue on a bitty though.
Men. And so it's not really a wonder that most comic movies do not reflect the spirit of the comics they are based on. How does an insider tell the story of someone who has never been able to fit in, as hard as they try?
Kinda correct. Actually kind of correct in this, but not for the reasons she thinks. And this is probably going to be why the title of the video is Social Justice is Almost Right, but not for the reasons they think. It's the problem with this kind of mindset. As soon as you start breaking everyone down into their component pieces instead of taking them as they are as an individual. I'm just going to quickly back it up just a wee bit, just so we can have
Most
another
comic
quick
movies
listen
do
to
not
this.
reflect the spirit of the comics they are based on. How does an insider tell the story of someone who has never been able to fit in?
You see, so how does an insider tell the story of an outsider? Okay, true. However, a lot of the people who actually make these kind of films, at least the very beginning, the Marvel ones especially, were nerds. Poindexters, the ones that used to get wedgies and swirlies if you're in America. For me, it was just a fucking beating. Well, that might have been because my parents were English. Let me tell you, you have no idea what it's like being an outsider living in Scotland when your parents are English. He says as he's quickly stirring a tea bag with his hands. Aye, you are correct in a way. Oh, delicious tea. You are correct in a way with the commodification of nerd culture and insiders telling outsider stories. You've always been the insiders, and you've just lashed onto something that's now cool. Or maybe you always were a bit of a nerd, but you've traded that in for being a bit more of an ideologue rather than a storyteller or someone who actually understands these things anymore, and it's quite sad. Now let's continue on and see what else she has to say.
As hard as they try. All any of this has done is empower a certain subset of white, straight, cis male nerds who...
Man, I'm fucking up entirely. I shouldn't do this when I'm so tired. Either way, all it's done is empower a subset, a set of, was it white, straight male? Let's actually fucking find this properly, shall we? Let's actually give her day. There we go, perfect fucking frame of white, straight, cis male nerds. the ones that built every single fandom that you can think of, who have always actually been the most inclusive people. We just tend to be quite protective of it until we were told we needed to be more diverse, which ended up letting people in and ruining everything. Honestly, you don't understand a damn thing. And I think the sudden blowback you got to a lot of it, because I'll be making a video on your response to this. Yeah, entirely your response to this as well. When you suddenly apologise for not recognising that there were black people and women and everything else in these kind of spaces beforehand. I mean, I don't know about many people, but I was trained to be a nerd by my sister. I'm a massive, a way bigger nerd than she is now. I'll tell you that one. But my Warhammer painting I learned from her to begin with. Star Trek, I used to grow up watching her play Star Trek Generations, the first-person shooter, on the Windows 95 and 98. And then Star Wars as well. So many things. So many things. So the idea that it's just primarily made for, or these people didn't exist in it before, is plainly ridiculous. They just weren't that numerous because there wasn't really any social benefit for it. Let's continue on just a wee bit, shall we?
Who, rejected by their peers for one reason or another, have decided to impose that same social hierarchy on nerd spaces, making it unsafe for people of color, queer people, and women. Both versions of
Right, well that does an automatic fucking review. Let's just go back here. So impose that same social hierarchy. What social hierarchy is she
unsafe
talking
for
about?
people nerd spaces, making it unsafe.
Okay, this is just fucking ridiculous. Go back here, you fucking piece of shit. There we go.
Years for one reason or another.
Rejected by the peers for one reason or another. We're fucking nerds, you idiot. You fucking idiot. We always get rejected by our peers, just get pushed down, bullied, hurt one way or another, you name it. That's all the same for nerds. It's always the way it is. Although I don't think you quite understand that, because I don't think you've ever fully been ostracized like someone like I was, or many people who are nerds were, for liking things that are a bit nerdy, or very nerdy. Let me tell you, it's no fun. That's why you end up forming very strong social bonds with those that share it. So let's continue on again.
Have decided to impose that same social hierarchy on nerd spaces.
Yes, we impose that same social hierarchy on nerd spaces, or we should at least gatekeep people like you out of our hobbies. Our own safe spaces, and places where we no longer have to deal with the outside world, so we can escape its mundanery and its, quite frankly, horrific nature. And it's making it unsafe for people of colour, queer people and women. No, they are some of the safest spaces. A lot of us tend to be a wee bit overly accommodating to a lot of women when they're in our spaces because they're so rare. When it comes to black man and Asian man, Middle Eastern man, if they share the love of our hobbies or the love of our various media, there's no worry there. I mean, admittedly, coming from a 90% white part of the world, it's a rarity, but there are all colours even then in her nerd and hobby groups, and the internet has only made that more diverse. I hate that word, the use of that word now, but it's easier to just say that than anything else. Oh. It is a wide breadth of love that we all share this thing. We have arguments, sure. We fight over things and call each other the gamer words, as we have to refer to it nowadays, or else we get banned for God knows what. But but it's not an unwelcoming place. I might actually do a video on a couple of things that a friend of mine keeps saying about toxic fans, calling them they're just shitty then, just because they don't agree with the way he wants to see things. You can be a fan and just I don't know what the term would be a cunt. I think you can be. I mean, you're hardly gonna get such a massive group of people. Nah, anyway, this is a fucking tangent. I'm gonna have to make a video on that because it's an interesting subject to me. But aye, this is my first video on this channel. I'm a bit late to the party on this, and chances are soon, like 6 months, well, 2 months, 3 months, however long, this channel is just gonna get yeeted in its entirety, which is a saddening prospect. But hope to at least, you know, spread my ideas a wee bit, even though they might not be fully formed. Let's just finish out the video and make sure there's nothing else.
Is making it unsafe for people of color, queer people, and women. Both versions.
Okay, yeah, no, it just ends there. Right, well, first video. I hope it wasn't a too shite. Who knows? Might make more. Those that made it this far, ta very much for watching. I'll see you next time. Take care.